You paid $14 for salmon at the grocery store last week. You were told it was the best source of omega-3 fatty acids on Earth. You were lied to. There is a seed that contains 6 times more omega-3 fatty acids per gram than wild-caught salmon. It has more protein than beef. It contains all 21 amino acids, including the 9 your body cannot produce. It grows in 90 days without pesticides, without irrigation, without depleting the soil. George Washington grew it. Thomas Jefferson grew it. Every American mama grew it for 200 years. Then in 1937, one law made it a federal crime to plant a single seed, and the $50 billion fishing industry, the $80 billion soy industry, and the $500 billion pharmaceutical industry made sure it stayed that way for 81 years. The seed is hemp, and the story of its prohibition is the most successful corporate suppression campaign in American history. Hemp is not marijuana. This is the lie that enabled everything that followed. The two plants are biological cousins, both members of the cannabis sativa species, but the comparison ends there. Marijuana contains 15 to 30% THC, the psychoactive compound that produces intoxication. Hemp contains 0.3% or less. You cannot get high from hemp. You could smoke an entire field and experience nothing but a headache. The plants look different, grow differently, and serve entirely different purposes. But in 1937, the architects of prohibition understood something critical. If you cannot ban a product on its merits, ban it by association. They did not outlaw hemp because it was dangerous. They outlawed it because it was too useful, and the wrong people were profiting from it. The history of hemp is the history of civilization itself. Chinese emperors documented hemp cultivation in 2800 BCE, describing its seeds as one of the 5 sacred grains essential for national survival. The seeds provided protein and fat during famines. The stalks provided fiber for rope, paper, and textiles. By 1000 BCE, hemp had spread across Asia, Africa, and Europe. Every major maritime empire, Phoenician, Greek, Roman, Spanish, and British, relied on hemp rope and canvas for naval dominance. The word canvas derives from cannabis. The sails that carried Columbus to America were woven from hemp fiber. The ropes that rigged every ship in the British Navy came from hemp farms. The paper the Declaration of Independence was written on was made from hemp. For 10,000 years, this plant sustained empires, fed populations, and clothed civilizations. No agricultural product in human history has served more purposes, and none has been more systematically erased from public memory. But the seeds tell the real story. Hemp seeds contain 33% pure protein, more than any nut, legume, or grain. They contain all 21 amino acids in the exact ratios human biology requires. They are one of the only plant sources of gamma-linolenic acid, an omega-6 fatty acid that reduces inflammation throughout the body. They contain omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids in the optimal 3-to-1 ratio that nutritionists recommend, a ratio almost impossible to achieve through any other single food. The omega-3 content is staggering. A single tablespoon of hemp seeds contains 1,000 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid, the plant-based omega-3 that converts to EPA and DHA in the body. Wild salmon contains 170 milligrams per equivalent serving. Hemp delivers 6 times more omega-3 fatty acids without mercury contamination, without microplastics, without the environmental devastation of industrial fishing, and without the $14 price tag. The nutritional profile is so complete that researchers have theorized a human could survive indefinitely on hemp seeds and water alone. No other food makes that claim. Modern research confirms what traditional cultures practiced. A 2010 study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry analyzed the bioavailability of hemp seed protein and found absorption rates exceeding 91%, higher than soy, higher than whey, and higher than any plant protein tested. The amino acid profile matched human requirements more closely than any other plant source. A separate study from the University of Seville demonstrated that hemp seed oil reduced inflammatory markers by 33% in patients with eczema and dermatitis. The gamma-linolenic acid in hemp seeds directly inhibits the inflammatory cascade that drives most chronic Western diseases. Research from Finland found that daily hemp seed consumption lowered blood pressure and improved arterial function within 12 weeks. The cardiovascular benefits rivaled pharmaceutical interventions, and they come from a food that costs pennies to produce. Studies from Canada, Germany and Australia have replicated these findings. Hemp seed is not a supplement. It is not an alternative therapy. It is a complete food that modern science has validated at every level of inquiry. So why did America ban the most nutritious seed on Earth? The answer requires understanding 1937. William Randolph Hearst owned the largest newspaper chain in America and millions of acres of timber forest. He had invested heavily in wood pulp paper production. Hemp paper threatened to destroy his empire. A USDA report from 1916 declared that 1 acre of hemp produced as much paper as 4 acres of trees, and with a fraction of the chemical processing. DuPont had just patented nylon and was positioning synthetic fibers to replace natural textiles. Hemp fiber was the primary obstacle. Andrew Mellon, the Treasury Secretary and one of the wealthiest men in America, was DuPont's primary banker. His nephew-in-law, Harry Anslinger, ran the newly created Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and he needed a mission to justify his agency's existence. The interests converged. Hearst's newspapers launched a propaganda campaign associating hemp with violence, insanity, and Mexican immigrants. They used the Spanish word marijuana deliberately. Most Americans did not realize it referred to a plant their grandparents had grown. The Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 did not technically ban hemp. It imposed registration requirements, taxes, and paperwork so burdensome that legal cultivation became impossible. The American Medical Association opposed the bill. They were ignored. Farmers who had grown hemp for generations were criminalized overnight. The entire industry, including seed, fiber, oil and food, collapsed within 2 years. The suppression served multiple industries simultaneously. When hemp disappeared, DuPont's nylon captured the rope and textile market. Hearst's timber operations faced no competition, but the long-term beneficiaries were industries that did not yet exist in 1937. The soy industry exploded after World War II, filling the protein gap that hemp had occupied. Soy required heavy pesticide application, synthetic fertilizers, and enormous water consumption, inputs that created dependent relationships with chemical companies. The fishing industry marketed salmon and tuna as the only sources of essential omega-3 fatty acids, commanding premium prices for nutrients hemp provided at a fraction of the cost. The pharmaceutical industry built empires on inflammation, anti-inflammatory drugs, cholesterol medications, blood pressure treatments, conditions that adequate omega-3 fatty acid intake prevents. The cotton industry required 16,000 litres of water per kilogram of fibre, while hemp required 300 litres per kilogram. The plastics industry converted petroleum into materials that hemp cellulose could have replaced. Every industry that profited from the 20th century had a financial interest in keeping hemp illegal. The total annual revenue of industries that benefit from hemp prohibition exceeds $700 billion. That is the number that kept a seed criminalized for 81 years. The 2018 Farm Bill technically legalized hemp cultivation at the federal level. But the damage was generational. Farming infrastructure had disappeared, processing facilities had closed, seed genetics had been lost. The knowledge that every American farmer possessed in 1936 had been erased from family memory. State regulations remain chaotic, licensing requirements, testing mandates for THC, and zoning restrictions still prevent cultivation in large portions of the country. The USDA has issued guidelines that make compliant farming difficult for small producers. Banks refuse to finance hemp operations due to lingering federal ambiguity. Law enforcement continues to seize legal hemp shipments, unable to distinguish them from marijuana without laboratory testing. The plant is technically legal. The system remains designed to prevent its return. Meanwhile, Americans spend $35 billion annually on nutritional supplements trying to obtain nutrients that hemp seeds provide naturally. They spend $50 billion on fish oil capsules. They consume soy protein that requires massive pesticide applications, shipped from deforested land in South America. They eat salmon contaminated with mercury and microplastics from collapsing ocean ecosystems. The alternatives to hemp are destroying the planet and poisoning the population. the economics of suppression continue, because those economic interests still profit. But hemp does not require permission to be useful. It grows in 90 days. It thrives in poor soil. It actually improves soil quality for subsequent crops. It requires no pesticides because its dense growth pattern naturally suppresses weeds, and its biochemistry repels most insects. It sequesters more carbon per acre than any commercial crop. The seeds store for years without refrigeration. You can buy them legally in any grocery store in America. They are imported from Canada, where farmers never forgot how to grow them. 1 tablespoon per day provides your complete omega-3 requirement. 2 tablespoons provide 10 grams of complete protein. You can add them to smoothies, salads, oatmeal, or yogurt. You can press them into oil. You can grind them into flour. The same seed that built the British Navy, that fed Chinese dynasties, that American founding fathers considered essential to national independence. It costs $8 per pound and sits on the shelf at your local health food store. 81 years of prohibition, billions spent on enforcement, entire industries constructed on its absence, and yet the seed survived anyway. It waited. It is still waiting. Thanks for watching. Check out another video and make sure to hit subscribe.